Let's get into Friday feedback for the week. Emails, YouTube comments, Instagram replies, Twitter replies, TikTok replies. It's all fair game, and some of them will end up featured here. Some very interesting comments that I'm hearing from folks on all sides of the political aisle with regard to the forthcoming election. Here's Eddie S., who said, I voted for Obama, believing him to be more progressive, and was disappointed with his status quo presidency. I voted for Joe Biden, expecting a more status quo presidency, and have been pleasantly surprised by how much more progressive he's turned out to be. Age and wisdom sometimes go together. You can simultaneously hold the views that Joe Biden isn't as progressive as you or I are or might like him to be, and that he has also been the most progressive president, at least since FDR, if not indefinitely. Both of those things can be true. And I had I won't call them low, I'd call them moderate expectations for Joe Biden. And he has blown my expectations out of the water. I know that a lot of the discussion is about, on the right, it's about Marxism and dementia. And on the left, it's about status quo and being a true progressive and who can really beat Trump. But it's really difficult to make an empirical case that Joe Biden has been a bad president by any stretch of the imagination. Francis Simmons wrote in and says the only reason Trump hasn't bragged about warp speed again, meaning Operation Warp Speed to develop vaccines for COVID, is because he was booed when he did. Since then, he's never mentioned it again. He has to keep his cult happy. Yeah, for a while, Trump was in this seemingly difficult position where, on the one hand, he wanted the benefit of having pushed Operation Warp Speed. Trump wanted us to think, thanks to him, we have vaccines. On the other hand, his followers hate vaccines, many of them. And when he did try talking about how he deserves credit for the vaccine, he got booed. Now, I don't know if Francis is completely right that Trump hasn't talked about it since, but it's very clear that on balance, the benefit of talking about how he did the vaccine stuff has diminished dramatically, and he's talking about it really infrequently. Arguably, I mean, listen, I wouldn't even really say that it was an accomplishment. Every country did the same thing. They pre-purchased vaccines to provide funding. One of the things that we can say he actually did right, like he didn't get in the way. It's no big miracle that Trump did it, but at least he didn't stand in the way of vaccine development. He can't even really talk about because so many of his followers hate it. One of the funny things we're seeing on the YouTube channel as the election approaches is just getting flooded with trolls who just come by and say, Trump 2024, Trump 2024. Here's just one little screenshot that shows it to you. This really doesn't bother me. There's a false belief among some of the Trump supporters in the audience that if Trump wins, I personally will have failed in some way. I'm not enough of an egocentric narcissist to think that I can influence the outcome of the election. I'm just sitting here in the corner doing my little show. We have 330 million people in this country, tens of millions of whom are borderline lunatics desperate to put Trump back in power. The fact that I might not be able to change that doesn't really have too much meaning. And so the people who love to come through and say, Dave, Trump 2024, when Trump wins, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. I'm not going to do anything. And as I've said before, Trump winning would actually be great for the show. It'd be bad for the country, which is why I don't want it, but it would be great for the show. And so I think we're going to be okay either way. Now, Mr. Choi wrote in with something different. Mr. Choi commented, by election day, Pakman will vote for Trump. There's very little I can say about this. If you think I'm some secret Trump supporter or will become one, and won't be honest with my audience about it, you're going to be waiting for a while. But one of the things I have said before is there's no character on the show. There's no, here's what I say publicly, but here's what I really believe privately. everything that I espouse on the show is really my belief. And by the way, there's a number of areas where if I just wanted to do what made the audience happy, I could take a different position, but anything you hear is just what it really is. So what I will tell you is this. I don't see any path to me becoming a Trump voter by November. I just don't see it. If it happens, I will tell you. If I become the Trump supporter this guy predicts, I will absolutely give you that information. DG said, I voted against Trump twice and will do so a third time. But let's be honest, Biden is way too old. He's always messing up thoughts and delivery that it's hard to defend him against the cognitive decline allegations. Yeah, I think a better approach on this, because listen, as I've been saying for years, it's obviously not the same Joe Biden from 2012 when he ran circles around Paul Ryan in the VP debate. It's obviously not that Biden. Biden's in his 80s now. My view on this is, even if you convince me that Biden is suffering from cognitive decline, it seems obvious Trump is as well. Trump's ideas are terrible and Biden's ideas are good. Trump puts sycophants around him who get nothing done, and Biden puts people around him who have executed what I believe on paper is the most progressive presidential term, certainly in 70 years. So if they're both demented, I'm voting Biden and you should too. It actually doesn't really make things that much more complicated. Oh, well, why not kick them out and find someone new to run? Because you probably lose if you do that. It's really chaotic after Biden has already swept every primary. Then go, I think we're going to kick you out because of your age. Really? Well, I've got arguably the most successive progressive term in history. Yeah, we're going to kick you out because you're 81 or however old he is. That generates chaos. I don't think that helps Democrats. So that's why I don't think they're going to do it. Jeff Hudson wrote in and says, if Trump got what wanted, he might not find he has won because Biden would also have the same rights that Trump wants. And Biden is the president with the power of the president. Trump, you reap what you sow. Yeah, I think what this individual is trying to communicate is that a lot of the arguments Trump is making now with Biden as president are potentially really bad arguments for Trump. For example, if there really is total presidential immunity that Trump claims for himself while he was president, that means Biden has total and complete immunity right now. If Biden wants to come up with whatever way to stay in office indefinitely, according to Trump, Biden has immunity. You can't do anything about it. Or similarly, if Trump had every right to stop the counting of the electoral votes, send things back to the states, fake slates of electors, all of that stuff. If Trump had that ability legally in 2020, Biden has it now, and he can do that exact same thing to keep himself in the Oval Office. If that's the point Jeff is making, I think it's a very good one. Wicked Beats posted to the subreddit, do you think Joe Biden will eventually resign? And they write, Joe Biden seems to believe that he must personally defeat Trump in 24. Biden doesn't trust anyone to get the job done but himself. Otherwise, he would announce he's not running and allow Democrats to hold a primary election. Biden once said while campaigning, I view myself as a transition candidate, implying he knows he's too old to stick it out for 2 whole terms. I think he may still see himself this way, and that he probably knows he's too old for another full term. I know it, you know it, your grandma knows it. 83 years is pretty old to be starting a second term for the most scrutinized and important job on earth. The only way Biden ensures the presidency remains with Dems in 24 and 28 is to win the election and eventually resign at an opportune moment, passing the torch to Kamala Harris before advanced age renders him ineffective. He would avoid an election disaster for Dems in 2028. This is an interesting one. This is less crazy in the sense of saying, kick Biden out now despite an extraordinarily successful first term. I am not yet ready to take a position on resignation after winning, but I'm going to think about it. And this is someone who is at least being a little more realistic in their thoughts about what could or should go down. All right. And also from Reddit, user OK Refrigerator says, I don't understand why a criminal conviction would change potential Trump voters' minds against voting for him. I think this makes a lot of sense. Take a look. If someone is willing to vote for Trump up to this point, why is conviction the deciding factor? They ignore his mental decline, his role in January 6th, his fellatiation, I don't know if that's a word, of foreign dictators, his known abuses of blue-collar workers, his gross affiliation with Jeffrey Epstein, his 91 bogus indictments, bogus in quotes. What would a guilty verdict do to change the minds of these people? Why would they even believe the trial was fair? I'd be curious if anyone has an explanation. I actually agree with this completely. And the way I would frame it is as follows. If you are still a supporter of Trump at this stage of the game, why do you care about conviction? You would write the convictions off as rigged. They would reinforce your need to support Trump. But here's the important thing. The poll that this person is referring to found 80% of Americans say if Trump were convicted, they wouldn't vote for him. The really important thing to remember is that that includes a whole bunch of people who already would never vote for Trump. So I think that the slice who would change their position on this based on a conviction is actually quite small. I don't think the conviction would move that many people. And if that's the case, I think the numbers do not look good for Trump in November because it means he already has lost a lot of voters. I don't know that for a fact. Nobody should stay home. Every single one of us must vote. But it is absolutely the case that if you are still sticking with Trump right now, why the hell would you let a conviction dissuade you? And that's what makes me think Trump's in a really bad spot in November. Let me know your thoughts. We have a fantastic bonus show coming up today. Sign up at joinpakman.com. It's going to be a doozy, and then I'll be back here on Monday.